Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of Nostalgia Train. And yes, if you saw from the trailer, in this episode we're going to be talking about the 1988 horror movie, The Blob. It's one of those movies I love as a kid. I wasn't afraid of this film when I saw it back when I was a kid. I loved it. I enjoyed it. It wasn't a box office hit though. It was box office bomb, but it's gone on to have a huge cult following. It's one of those movies of the 80s that always get referenced. One of those horror movies from the 80s that always get talked about, and it was fantastic. The film for me was fantastic. So as you saw from the trailer, it's about this meteorite that crashed to Earth. There was a homeless man who went to the crash site, and there was this creature. Um, there was this like shapeless blob-like, for lack of a better word, uh, thing that was in the crash site, and it attached itself to the homeless man. So he runs off and gets hit by a car being driven by Paul and his girlfriend Meg, the teenagers, and Brian Washley. He's one of he's the another character. He's the lead character in the film. He was actually running after the homeless man to kind of help him out, but then they now like take him to the hospital. So at the hospital, like the doctor's busy, so they now put him in the room to wait for the doctor. They give him a room to wait for the doctor to be free to see him. So Brian decides to leave because he's like, I've got other things to do. I'm not gonna stay all night. So he now leaves. So Paul now decides to get something to drink, and he now sees like something is wrong with the homeless man that was in the room all by himself. So he now goes to check and sees like was something was happening to him, like something was eating him from the inside or something. So he now runs and gets the doctor. So the doctor now comes in. They now pull back the blanket of the homeless man. Now see like the thing in his hand had like devoured him, like from the stomach down was gone. So Brian now, not Brian, and Paul now runs to like the doctor's office to call the sheriff and say, okay, look what just happened, this and that. And I mentioned that Brian was also there, but he's left. But while he was talking, the creature had now was now like above him, and he now like saw acid drops coming from the ceiling on the table, and he now like looked up, and the creature now falls on him. So he now screams, in that moment. So his girlfriend Meg, she now runs to find out what's happening to him. So she now sees this pink like uh, creature like melting him away. So she now, and he's like trying to reach for her. So she now decides to pull him free, but his arm was like but his arm now like comes off, and she now slams against the wall and becomes unconscious. So the creature now completely devours Paul. So police now arrive moments later, and she tells them because they don't believe. So her parents now come and they take her home. So she now sneaks out from her bedroom because she wants to go talk to Brian, who police also pick up because he's like the town's troublemaker. So everything they always pick him up first. He's the chief suspect. Well, during the interrogation, they realize he's not the killer because they believe someone killed Paul because they didn't see. They only saw the decapitated arm, so they didn't see a dead body. So they're like, clearly he's someone killed him. Maybe now took the body with them or something. So they let him go. So she now meets Paul at the station as he's leaving. She now tells him she needs to talk to him about what happened. Actually, like really talk to him about what happened. He wasn't there, so he doesn't know the story. So they now go to this diner because he's hungry, and while they're there, she now tries to tell him, but of course he doesn't believe because it sounds really absurd. Who would believe that? So while they're there, the owner of the diner and her handyman, in the sink they now had like a blockage. So the handyman now decides to try and free the drainage, and the creature now comes up from the drain and grabs hold of his head and sucks him through the sink. And Brian, the owner starts screaming. So Brian and Meg, they now run in there, and they now see this guy get sucked into the drain. So of course now he believes. So the creature now comes out of the drain and tries to get Brian and Meg and the owner. But the owner like bursts through a window and she runs out, runs outside. But they now run further into the diner, end up running into this walk-in freezer. So they now are in there. So the blood now tries coming in from under the door. But then because it feels the cold, it now retreats. But they didn't understand that it's allergic to cold. So they just waited for a while. Then they came out and saw that it was gone. So they now raced down to the station. So they now were told that the deputy was at the crash site, like gone to the crash site. So they now head out there. So they now see like not only the deputy was there, but like a whole science team plus the military were there in hazmat suits, and they were at the crash site. And they said, it's an organism from space. They need to be careful whether there's bacteria. There could be infection. People can be infected. A whole situation. So everyone in the town has to be quarantined. So they now said they're going to take them to the town, back to the town to quarantine them, and everyone in the town, the entire population, check them to make sure they're not, infected or something. So Brian feels like something is fishy, like how fast they got there after this incident happened. Like, it's too fast. Like clearly these people were expecting it. So there's more to the story. So he decides not to leave with her. So he now like sneaks around the crash site. So she now goes back to town. Now sees her parents. So it turns out everyone's being quarantined. Everyone's being like gathered at the town hall. So there she now, sorry for the noise. There she now learns that her younger brother had gone to the cinema to see a movie with his best friend. So she now heads down there to try and to go get him. But unfortunately, the place gets attacked by the Blob, which is now bigger, a lot bigger, and is killing people and all that. So she now gets her brother, and they now run into the sewers to try and get away from the Blob, because there was like no other way to go. So they now run to the sewers to get away from the Blob. So of course he follows them in there. So already the science team are already monitoring the Blob and all that. So they know now it's in the sewers and they're tracking it. So they now get radio back while Brian was actually hiding there, like near the chief scientist, Dr. Meadows, like he's talking to his colleagues and all that. So they now get the call that, oh look, there are also some civilians trapped on the ground with the Blob, in sewers, and what about them? So like they're expendable, that they should just shut all the exits, let it be trapped down, because they want to. So actually we now find out that the creature was actually created by the government, and is their experiment, and they want it back. They want to retrieve it. So they don't care who dies in the process. So Brian hears that, and there's like a scuffle, and he now gets away, and they now chase after him with the motorcycle. But he makes it to the underground tunnels, and there Meg is with her brother and his best friend, but they're trying to escape the Blob, and unfortunately the best friend gets taken and killed. But Meg is able to help her brother escape through like a hatch or something, but she's unable to pass because she's bigger. So she now sees Brian, so she now hops on his bike. So they now try to get out of the tunnel together. So eventually they make it out, and they now, like, the town folk are there now. So they now like Brian now confronts Dr. Meadows in presence of everyone, so everyone's hearing, even to the deputy, that look, they locked us down there with this thing, and they didn't mind for us to be killed by this thing just to catch their experiment. Actually, they created it. It's not like some germ wolf, some bacteria from space. That they actually created this thing. So there, the Blob now comes, now even kills Dr. Meadows, who was giving soldiers orders to kill Brian. It now gets hold of Dr. Meadows, now pulls him under the sewers, kills him. So it now bursts out, and there's a whole shootout and everything. So the town folk are now like in the town hall trying to barricade themselves in. So a lot of them starts getting killed. So they now there's this Reverend Mika. He sort of catches on fire when all the scientists is using a flamethrower to like burn the creature. So Meg now puts the fire out with the fire extinguisher. But then the creature now tries to grab hold of her. She now uses the fire extinguisher on the creature. Then it now retreats. So she now realizes allergic to cold. So Brian too realizes that. So he now runs off to this to get this snow truck, that makes snow. So he now runs to go get it. So he now arrives with it. Now starts to spray the Blob. So the Blob now like gets pissed and topples the truck over, trapping Brian in it. So Meg now goes and distracts the creature by shooting at it. Then she now takes a explosive, now put it on the truck, because it has liquid nitrogen. So it had detached itself from the truck itself, and like had rolled over the whole tank of it. Had really rolled away from where Brian was. So she now lured the creature by shooting at it towards herself. Then she now put the explosive to blow, which would turn all the do the mixture into the air and create like huge snowstorm, which would deal with the Blob. So she does that successfully, and it now turns into this like kind of like pink crystals. That's kind of like that's kind of the best way to describe it. So they now suggest that okay, the best way to store it now is in the town's freezer. That's the best way to store it, so it doesn't melt and takes shape back. So the final scene we see is kind of like a teaser for a sequel. It turns out Dr. Meeker, earlier in the film, went to that diner and went into the freezer and saw those. Because when the blob touched, came under the walk-in freezer, it retreated, right? So it's part of its, let me say, DNA got on the ice cubes or on the floor of the walk-in freezer, and so they released like two pink crystals, looking. So the Reverend was like, curious. So he now took this like glass jar, put the two crystals in it. It was now like looking at it though. So now like this is now like years later, he's now preaching like in a tent to a small congregation, and he's talking about the end of days, how the wrath of God and all of that. So he's kind of like in his sermon, you can tell like he's talking about how there's a scripture in the Bible about a meteorite called what's it called? Forgot something warm that is gonna, God is gonna use, that wrath of God. So you can tell he's talking about the blob. So after the sermon, he now goes to like a private room, and one of his congregation members now comes over and says, "When will this day of reckoning be?" So he now brings out the jar that he had put those two pink crystals. They had now melted and become a small blob. So he now says, "The Lord will give me a sign." So the film now ends there, like with a cliffhanger as to a sequel. But of course, there never was a sequel, but that was where the film wraps up. So it's really good. It's very, very interesting. You would love it if you have not seen The Blob. Very, very good. Great, fantastic horror film. Really good. One of my, beloved horror films from the 80s, like The Zombie, The Flesh Eater, and all the others. So that's it for this video. If you've enjoyed the video, please like my video. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to my channel. And I'll see you guys on the next one. Thank you.